You were raised on stories that said a real man proves himself by winning a woman's heart, that love is something you earn through effort, that longing makes you noble, that chasing her makes you human. But no one told you that this entire game, the chase, the pursuit, the fantasy, was designed to break you. They sold you an illusion, and you bought it with your time, your pride, and pieces of your soul. Diogenes, the philosopher who walked barefoot through Athens, who lived in a barrel and lit a lantern in broad daylight, claiming to search for an honest man, he saw the world differently. Where others wrote volumes about ethics and love, Diogenes mocked the very idea of needing someone else to feel complete. He spat on society's rules and laughed at the chains men wrapped around themselves. He said, "A wise man should carry his happiness within, not hang it on someone else's approval." But here you are, waiting on her text like it's salvation, smiling at her validation like it's oxygen. You made her smile your purpose, her attention your identity, her affection your self-worth. And by doing that, you gave her the keys to everything you are. You think you're chasing love, but really, you're just running from emptiness. You're not drawn to her. You're afraid of being alone with yourself. That's not romance, that's avoidance. Diogenes would have laughed, and he did. Once, he saw a young man blush in front of a beautiful woman. He shouted, "Don't be ashamed. The fault isn't yours, it's nature's, for making such creatures irresistible to fools. You call it hunger. He called it weakness. You call it the pursuit. He called it submission dressed in cologne. He urinated in public. He masturbated in the marketplace. And when people gasped, he said, 'If only rubbing my stomach cured hunger too.' Why? Not because he lacked shame, but because he wanted to expose yours. Your shame is the leash you wrapped around your own throat. You don't hide your instincts out of strength. You do it to seem more palatable, more acceptable, more dateable. You play the gentleman, not because it's virtuous, but because you think it increases your odds of being chosen. You wear masks. Diogenes burned masks. You build pedestals. He shattered them with mockery. You walk into rooms scanning for beauty. He walked into rooms scanning for fools. And more often than not, he found them in the faces of men like you, eager, dressed up, performing for women who never asked for a performance. "I threw away my cup," he once said, "when I saw a child drinking from his hands." He stripped his life down to its essence. And you? You decorate your cage. You chase silk without mastering steel. Diogenes wasn't against women. He was against illusions. And there's no illusion more dangerous than the belief that a woman's love will redeem you. He has the most, he said, who is most content with the least. But you are never content. You scroll. You swipe. You wait for a ping. You check her Instagram stories like it's a lifeline. You replay conversations in your head. You write messages you never send. You sit in silence, haunted by women who never loved you, or worse, those who did until you gave too much and they pulled away. You were told to chase, to prove, to fight for love. But Diogenes didn't chase. He stood still. He let truth expose everything around him. When Alexander the Great, the most powerful man alive, approached him and asked, "What can I do for you?" Diogenes didn't kneel. He didn't flatter. He didn't bow. He looked up and said, "Yes, step aside. You're blocking my sunlight." That is power. That is presence. That is a man who does not orbit. But you orbit her like she's the sun, and you're just some planet desperate for warmth. You shape yourself to fit her preferences. You edit your tone. You change your plans. You trade your truth for her attention, and then call it love. Diogenes would call it slavery. Not because women enslave you, but because you walk into chains with open arms and a bouquet in hand. He said, "The most beautiful woman in the world is nothing without character, and character is nothing without truth." And here's the truth. Most of what you call love is just fear. Fear of being alone, dressed up in pretty metaphors. Most of what you give, it's not generosity, it's negotiation. You hand her your time, your energy, your ambition, hoping she'll give you back proof that you matter. That's not love. That's a trade. And when the trade fails, when she stops replying, When she seems distant, you're crushed. Not because you lost her, but because you lost the mirror that made you feel valuable. But Diogenes? He didn't need a mirror. He faced the world as it was, raw, unfiltered, ugly, and true. He didn't coat the decay with perfume. He didn't pretend longing was noble. He barked like a dog to call out how ridiculous society had become. And so I ask you, not as a preacher, not as a guru, just one man to another, when do you stop? When do you stop calling obedience loyalty? When do you stop mistaking erasing yourself for connection? The woman you chase isn't your enemy. The version of her you built in your head is. You think it's love, but it's dependency. You think it's romantic, but it's addiction. You keep telling yourself, she's different. She sees me. She gets me. But Diogenes said, it is the privilege of the gods to want nothing, and of godlike men to want little. So ask yourself, what kind of man crumbles when a woman leaves his message on read? What kind of god needs a goddess to feel real? You weren't born to orbit, you were built to build. But somewhere along the line, you were taught that your worth comes from being picked, not from choosing. So now you scroll dating apps like a beggar. You smile through rejections like a clown. You swallow your pride like a pill. And you call that dating? Diogenes would have called it decay. He walked barefoot through filth. He lived off scraps. And yet even Alexander the Great couldn't make him bow. Why? Because he had nothing to lose. And the man with nothing to lose, he cannot be controlled. But you give her everything before she even asks. You lose sleep over her silence. You bend your life into shapes that might please her. And you call it romance. But Diogenes would have barked at your performance. He would have called it what it really is. Submission. But here's the raw truth no one tells you. If she didn't want you when you were being honest, if she only showed interest when you were performing, then she never wanted you at all. She wanted the act, the illusion, the mask. And deep down, you knew it. That's why you felt empty after every compliment. That's why her attention never felt like a rival-only delay. You were always trying to keep the show going, scared of what might happen if the curtain dropped. Diogenes didn't live for applause, he lived for truth. He slept in a barrel and spat on social norms because he wanted to strip life down to what was not what was expected. And what is expected of you? Be nice, be patient, be persistent. Win her over, suppress your hunger but stay hungry. Chase, but never too fast. Speak, but only what she wants to hear. You think you're being strong, but you're bending. You think you're being kind, but you're shrinking. You think you're being romantic, but you're just erasing yourself piece by piece in hopes of being seen. Diogenes didn't erase himself. He magnified his presence by needing nothing. When they mocked him, he barked. When they ignored him, he laughed. When Alexander the Great stood before him with the entire world in his hands, Diogenes didn't ask for anything, he just asked him to move out of his sunlight. Why? Because power isn't found in control, it's found in detachment. And you have none. You hold your phone like a lifeline. You check her story like it's scripture. You stay up at night wondering what you did wrong, when the only mistake was assuming you had to do anything at all. Do you think Diogenes would beg to be loved? Would he rehearse messages just to seem less eager? Would he dress differently just to be more her type? Number. Because real men don't orbit. They blaze. They don't mold themselves to fit someone else's desire. They walk in their truth, even if it means walking alone. And maybe that's what scares you. Not rejection, not loneliness, but facing who you are without the roles, without the masks, without her. Because when you stop chasing, the silence hits. And in that silence, the truth starts to echo. You're not looking for love. You're looking for yourself. And until you find that man under the pain, beneath the ache, behind the mask, you'll keep running in circles, mistaking attention for affection and validation for value. Diogenes didn't confuse those things. He knew the world was filled with illusions, and he tore through them without apology. You romanticize the struggle. He ridiculed it. You treat love like salvation. He saw it as another illusion to conquer. You measure your worth by her responses. He measured a man by how little he needed. He once said, "It is not that I am mad, It is only that my head is different from yours, and yours, brother, is filled with fantasies, stories sold to you since childhood, that the right woman will fix everything, that love is waiting at the end of suffering, that if you just try hard enough, she'll see you. But the truth, the harder you try, the less she sees you, because the more you chase, the less you are. You become an echo of her expectations, a mirror of her moods, a puppet hoping for approval. Diogenes would bark at that, loudly, publicly, not to humiliate you, but to wake you. Because barking was his way of saying, stop pretending, start living. You pretend you're strong because you chase, but real strength walks away. You pretend you're generous because you give, but real generosity never negotiates. You pretend you're loyal, but real loyalty isn't to a woman, it's to your soul. And the soul of a man should never kneel for love. It should rise in truth. You think your sacrifice makes her love you more, but she didn't ask for it. You offered it out of fear, and fear, no matter how well dressed, repels. She doesn't want your desperation. She wants your direction. She doesn't crave your poetry. She craves your peace. And you have none because you gave it away, hoping she'd return it, wrapped in affection. But Diogenes knew. No one can give you what you refuse to build yourself. So build. Build peace. Build standards. Build identity. Stop waiting to be chosen, and start choosing yours again and again, until the need to chase dies a quiet death inside you. Then and only then will you be seen. Not because you're begging, but because you're finally standing still. Diogenes didn't win crowds. He offended them. But when they left, he didn't flinch. Because when you stop needing to be loved, you become someone worth loving. You become a man. Not a dreamer. Not a pursuer. Not a performer. A man. Whole, free, untamed. And in that rare fire, everything changes. Let others chase. You walk. Let others beg. You build. Let others dim. You burn. Diogenes is still walking through your doubts, through your ache, through every part of you that still believes love must be earned through suffering. And if you listen closely, you'll hear him say, throw away your cup. You're more than you think. And Shesh was never the destination. You were.